Doctor. So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
Small off-duty Czechoslovakian traffic warden.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
All right, dudes, it's time for another episode of It's Time to Rewind. I am known as Bubbawheat, not the Bubbawheat, not first name Bubba, last name Wheat, just Bubbawheat. This season is Red Who, where I'm covering British sci-fi like Red Dwarf and Doctor Who, and joining me 3 million years in the future via the TARDIS is my guest, Jason Soto. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this should be fun because I feel like this episode is where I've kind of caught up to my own Doctor Who watch.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of the episode that we are going to be talking about is The Unicorn and the Wasp, which was the 7th episode of the 4th season of the new Doctor Who, featuring the 10th Doctor David Tennant, and it originally aired on May 17th, 2008. But before we jump into that, I would like to know what's your history with Doctor Who? How did you discover the show?
Oh my God, it'll take a whole podcast, and maybe there is one out there. Yeah. So really, it's my mom. My mom was the reason for me liking the show at all. She's the one that introduced me to the original run back in the 80s. It used to air on the local not
PBS.
local access, PBS. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you're in the Chicagoland area, it was WTTW channel 11. And they used to run like every Sunday night. They would used to run all the old Doctor Who's, and so my mom would watch those like religiously. The 4th Doctor was her favorite. She loved Tom Baker. It was like her number one favorite Doctor. And so she was, telling me about it. She knew I had an interest in time travel, even at a very young age. I like time travel movies and stories and whatnot. And she was like, "You should watch this show," and I did. And then we both were really excited when it got rebooted back in 2005.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I just been kind of gung-ho since I was a wee lad.
So you started watching the new Who like right whenever it premiered?
Actually, yeah, because my mom she saw an ad for it, and it was on the Sci-Fi. It used to air here in America on the Sci-Fi channel, because we didn't have the BBC America. So they used to be able to rerun them on the Sci-Fi channel, and then eventually we got the cable package of the BBC America, where we were able to kind of watch them as they were brand new, like they debuted. And so I did get to watch like all of the Ninth Doctor in its original run. I missed the beginning of the the 10th Doctor's run, but I ended up catching up to it. So, but yeah, we were both very into the new ones.
Yeah, that's nice. And in my own personal Doctor Who watch, I am almost to David Tennant's regeneration. So
Mm.
I'm like I just watched his last Christmas special. So I
Uh,
think there's like, 2 or 3 more specials before he becomes Matt Smith. So
okay, okay.
I'm almost done with David Tennant. So this is kind of nice that I've kind of caught up to, the podcast. Although originally I was hoping that I would, catch up with my watching to as I finished the podcast. But at the pace I'm going, I don't think I'm even going to finish Matt Smith before I finish uh, this season of the podcast.
Matt Smith, he only had like a few seasons. He didn't
Yeah,
last
but
like a super long time.
well, that's I kind of thought that, but then whenever I was looking at the numbers, like every doctor except for Eccleston did 3 seasons in New Who.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. But still, I mean, I don't know. You could probably, I think you can do it. I have faith in you.
I could if I actually, was, really binging it.
Hmm.
But I like to savor my watches
Ah,
whenever I do these kind of things. So I don't like doing more than like one, maybe two episodes in one day if it's like a two-part episode. But otherwise I like to, just do one, no more than one episode a day. And, a lot of times I'll skip days. So it takes me a while to get through a series that I'm, really interested in and don't just like want to put on in the background.
oh, okay. That's fair. And I think you do need to kind of pay attention to some episodes of Doctor Who because they reference things like later on down the road, and you need to kind of remember, oh yeah, that's right, that happened.
Yeah, like I mean, I know I've caught up with some stuff in the fourth season that I know comes back because yeah, I watched River Song's first episode because she
Oh
she
yeah,
popped
yeah.
up with David Tennant, and I know she comes back. I believe she becomes a companion with Matt Smith.
She does. She very much does. Yes.
But this, we're talking about David Tennant, and he didn't really have any real time loopy episodes, so.
Mm,
For this episode, I left it actually up to you to pick the episode that we're talking about. So
hmm.
what was it about the unicorn and the wasp that's that made you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so David Tennant is like my favorite Doctor. I like basically all of his episodes mostly. I like his acting style. I just like the way he plays a doctor. He's really fun. I don't know. I just like him. And so when I was looking at all of the stories, I really had a hard time picking. And I kind of wanted to do kind of like a one-off. I didn't want to do anything with like an arching plot or like a two-parter or anything like that. And then I landed on this one, and I this one's kind of a underdog episode. Doesn't get talked about a whole lot,
Mhm.
because the companion is Donna, and
Well,
Donna's very, fans kind of don't like Donna. She's not
that
the
I
most
actually
popular one.
I think fans have come around on her,
Like
or at least
lately, yeah.
because I on threads I have been talking a lot about Doctor Who, and I put out the discussion asking people what their top three companions were, and
Hmm.
Donna showed up quite a bit in people's
Okay.
top threes, and she was several people's number one. So I think Donna's more popular than you give credit, and I
At
was
the
surprised that Rose didn't show up as often because I always thought that Rose was kind of near the top.
I wonder if that's because she returned for the anniversary episode, the 60th anniversary episode that just went
Oh,
off the
right,
air.
yeah.
And I'm wondering if that may have, because when she like was new, like it was airing, people were kind of like, they didn't hate her. I don't want to make it sound like they hated her or anything, but they were like, can we have Martha back? Like we prefer to Martha. Um, but I like Donna. I think Donna's cool. She doesn't take any. She may not be the smartest person on the planet, but she can hold her own. And I do like the chemistry between David Tennant and Catherine Tate. They got like a amazing chemistry together.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought that she was like the perfect personality to bring in because Rose was fantastic as a first companion. I absolutely loved Rose. I feel like Martha kind of got short shrift because
yeah,
she
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 did.
really felt like Rose 2.0,
Yeah,
where she was just, she had this crush, but the doctor wasn't over Rose, and so
yeah,
it was, much more of a one-sided relationship. And then Donna came, and she was the complete opposite. She is very much her own character, and
yeah.
I did not like her very much in her Christmas special.
Mm.
Um, I thought she was a bit too abrasive in that episode. But whenever she came back as a companion, I think that they toned her down a bit.
Mm.
She still has that fiery personality and very much a lot of the, oh, we're not together.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, so Donna, and then the other thing about this episode that I enjoy, is it's based on an actual real event that happened. which is kind of the crux of the episode. It centers around Agatha Christie, and in real life, she went missing for 10 days. And when they found her, she was at a random hotel, like way on the other side of like Britain or Ireland or wherever it was. And she had no memory of how she got there, why she was there. Her car was like miles and miles away by a lake. And so they based this episode around that mystery. And they even give their own little explanation, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But I'm fascinated by that mystery because Agatha Christie is like one of the most famous mystery writers of all time. And then she was involved in her own mystery of just like, well, where the hell was she for 10 days? And she doesn't remember anything. And she refused to talk about it after it happened. She just was like, yep, we're just going to. Has a common thing that's through this episode is we're British. We're just going to carry on. And that's what she did. And then she got remarried. She wrote more novels. And then she died of old age and never talked about it ever again. And no one ever figured out what happened. So I kind of like that they used like a real life thing, and then they used a kind of like a fictional explanation for what did happen. That's I kind of like when they do that.
Yeah, I think that kind of like I know I didn't dive too deeply into the classic Doctor Who, but I know especially like with William Hartnell with the first Doctor, a lot
Hmm.
of those episodes were historical episode. It was
Yeah,
almost a bit like, Peabody and Mr. Sherman kind of thing,
yeah,
except with less parody and, more uh, action educational content. And
yeah.
then it eventually devolved into, or evolved, depending on your outlook, into they would be visiting historical events, but there would be an alien involved, and they would have to
Right.
stop the alien in order to make the historical events happen the way that they should have happened in history. And this is kind of another one of those episodes where it is like that's kind of historical episode.
Yeah, it takes like a real event and then they're like aliens. Um, but like you mentioned it, yeah, people think, oh, I'm gonna go back and watch the Hartnell episodes, but they don't realize they're very dry because they were more trying to like educate people back then.
Hmm.
And there's like, I'm just giving an example. There's a whole run, and it's like an 8 episode run where they're just hanging out with Marco Polo. And like nothing exciting happens. There's no aliens, there's no technology. It's just them hanging with Marco Polo for 8 episodes. And it's the most driest thing you'll ever see. So be warned if you go back to the Hartnell era.
Yeah, and I believe I just listened to another podcast where they were talking about the Hartnell era, and they mentioned that the they would have the historical episodes that was supposedly teaching history, and
Hmm.
then the science or the space episodes were supposedly teaching science
Hmm.
concepts.
Yeah. Yeah. They were trying to be like a kid show back then when they first started it. So there you go.
Yeah, and then this is much more. There's a lot more running.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of running. It's a lot more interesting this episode, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's another reason I like this episode, but I'm gonna wait till we get into it before I explain it, because it's a really clever thing that they did.
Yeah, and so we kind of talked about it, but they arrive in 1926, and this is, relatively, well, I guess it was the seventh episode, but it's still, at least from Donna's perspective, it still kind of feels like early in her
Mm.
run as the companion, where she's still, excited by everything that's
Hmm.
going on. And, she's excited to go to a 1920s dinner party
Yep.
rather than some other space event.
Yep. Yep.
And she has the nice bit where she changes into a flapper gown.
I want to point that out because they don't do that a lot. Um, Whenever they go back in time, they're just dressed as how they're dressed. And it doesn't bug me. I don't get mad about it, but I'm always like they're like interacting with like 1800s people and then they're wearing a jean jacket. And I'm just like, aren't the other people like wondering about like why they're dressed like that? So I like it when they do change their outfits to match the era that they're in. This brand new Doctor that just went off the air on Disney Plus, they were really good with that. They were actually dressing to the era that they were in. And so having Donna do that in this episode, I was like, oh, yes, dress like a flapper. That makes total sense. Of course, David Tennant stayed David Tennant. He's still dressed how he dressed, but at least he
Well,
kind
and the Doctor is always kind of timeless in his outfits,
yeah,
other
yeah.
than his shoes, I guess. Tennant has the
Yeah,
like the Converse or the
the
Doc
Converse shoes,
Martens.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But otherwise, yeah, I was happy to see Donna change into the flapper outfit.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think of, whenever she first came aboard, she had all the different luggage. It makes me wonder if if she actually, somehow packed a flapper dress and all that luggage,
Oh,
or
I didn't think
if
about that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, that's funny. That would be funny. Yeah.
yeah, instead we just kind of, she just comes out of the TARDIS dressed era appropriate. And
Hmm.
I the other bits that I love, because this episode does have a lot of comedy to it.
Hmm.
It is, there's a lot of just silliness, and I think that's probably why some people wouldn't rank it as one of the better episodes.
Mm.
And I think I get that. I did enjoy it. I like the mystery aspect. I like the uh, most of the comedy bits. There's one that's, that we'll get to, that I thought was a little bit too much,
Mm.
but I liked whenever Donna was like ordering the drink, and then she was going heavy into the 20s dialogue,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Tennant's like, no, no, don't do that. No,
Yeah,
no,
no,
no.
no, 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 don't do that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, don't go too deep into the 20s slang.
Yeah, and so they get to this dinner party with Lady Edison, and they're warned about the unicorn, who is this uh
Jewel
rove
thief.
yeah, roving jewel thief. And of course they all refer to them to the unicorn as a male, because they
Yeah.
assume that it's a male.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I don't think any of the viewers were surprised whenever it was revealed to be the woman in the party.
No, yeah, I was like, it's probably a woman. When I first watched this and they were talking about it, I'm like, I'm sure it's one of the women that's in this thing. So yeah, I was just like, yeah, of course. Um, okay, well, I guess we'll talk about it now. So did you catch the first time you watched this, a rather interesting similarity to a certain board game?
Yes, I definitely noticed I'm not sure if I noticed it immediately, but especially whenever Donna points it out, she's like, "Really, Professor Peach in the library with a
Yep, yeah.
lead pipe?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's definitely referencing Clue there."
Yeah, or Cluedo if you're in the UK. Yeah, like all the characters are supposed to be like the Clue characters, mostly from the board game. So there's little differences that if you only familiar with the movie, like Mrs. White in the board game is actually a maid. Instead of Mr. Green, it's Reverend Green. And then everything else is kind of the same. There is a Peach character that kind of, depending on what version of the game you got. I can't remember who they swapped that out with, but there is a Miss Peach that does show up. And then like everyone else is pretty much like, oh, that's Mrs. Peacock, that's Colonel Mustard, he's Colonel. That's the professor. And then the weapons, they even put in the weapons. They got like the lead pipe, they got the candlestick, there's a revolver that shows up,
And the
and
dagger.
and the dagger, yeah, and then a piece of rope shows up. Um, yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was because Clue was very much based on the trope that Agatha Christie more or less created of the mystery in the big mansion. Like everyone's gathering at a party in a big mansion, someone gets murdered, and then they got to figure out who did it. And
And
so
it's
I,
usually the butler.
and it's usually the butler. So I'm pretty sure that was like their little like wink and a nod to that. So
Yeah, and
and
they
I thought
even
that was
had the
clever.
moment where, towards the end, after the second, or like the third or fourth Wasp reveal, and then they go in the other room, and it's the doctor, Donna, Agatha, and the butler, and they say, "Well, we know it definitely wasn't the butler."
Yeah, yeah, that was funny. I remember when that came on, I was like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't the butler." Um, but yeah, and then so that's another reason why I kind of enjoyed this episode because I think they had fun writing it. Like, not only did they have to come up with all this clue stuff, then they had to come up with this Agatha Christie stuff, Agatha Christie references, even to like stuff that she hadn't written yet.
Hmm.
Because Donna keeps like bringing up stuff that she hadn't gotten to yet, like Murder on the Orient Express
Hmm.
and whatever else. And then she's like, "Oh, what is that?" And then she even talks about like, "Oh yeah, your
Uh,
books are gonna make great movies someday."
yeah, talking pictures.
Are
What?
we talking?
Talking
Yeah,
pictures? What's that?
yeah. And
Copyright Donna Noble.
yep, yeah. Make sure you put me in the copyright. Um, yeah. Now, where I will say the episode does lose me a touch is the inclusion of the Wasp because that's our alien factor. And I was digging the mystery angle of this episode. And then they're like, okay, well, it's Doctor Who, so we got to put in a silly alien plot line.
Hmm.
And so then they have to kind of put in, oh,
A
also on
giant
top
CGI
of
wasp.
a giant CGI wasp, and on top of trying to solve a murder and a jewelry thief, we're gonna try to figure out like what's up with this alien giant wasp that's here,
The
and
Vespa
and
form.
and then and then they explain that, and I'm like, that's the weaker part of the episode to me is the wasp part. I would have been perfectly fine if the episode was just they landed at this dinner party in 1926. Agatha Christie's there. There's a murder mystery. They solve the murder mystery, and then they move on and just leave out the alien part. Because not every episode of Doctor Who has to have alien stuff in it. Maybe that's
Mhm.
controversial for me to say, but like it's fine that they just went back and tried to solve a murder mystery.
Yeah, I also like the the kind of next bit of comedy where they're going through like after they're interrogating everybody for the murders, and they're all recounting where they were during
Oh,
the time of the murder.
yeah, yeah.
And then we see, we hear what they say, and then we see the actual flashbacks, and none of them match up with what I
Nope.
mean. There's always a little bit, we have the woman that's eventually revealed to be the unicorn,
Hmm.
saying that she was in the bathroom, and we just see her with the revolver. And then we see the son, and he says, I was just taking a walk,
Mm.
constitutional, alone, definitely alone, completely alone.
Yeah, yeah.
And the entire time that in the flashbacks, it's him and the houseboy.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and they and I did watch this twice because I watched this, I got to it through my current watch about 2 weeks ago, I think.
Mm.
And then I watched it again earlier, and I did catch the fact that Donna clocked that the two of them were gay kind of
Yeah. Y-
early in the party.
Yeah, she's pretty good at picking up on stuff like that.
And then we have the colonel that was saying that he was doing some reading in in the study, and he was looking at like a pinup
Oh yeah.
picture.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was looking at the
Uh,
what constituted as porn back in the
mm.
1920s. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
that
he's
was
like,
funny.
and then he says, and yeah, that takes me back to the war times. And then he has a flashback within a flashback
Flashback. Yeah.
of him like looking at the dancing girls. And then the
Hmm.
doctor's like, all right, come back to reality. And then then he tries to go back to him reading in the reading room, and he's like, no, come all the way back.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
and then after that, we get the interview with Lady Edison, and then she in hers, she says, was drinking tea, to get to can gather my strength for the party, and you see her
Hmm.
like drinking alcohol out of a flask. And
Hmm.
then she talks about meeting the doctor, and then the doctor's like, I know, I was there for that
I
part.
know. I was yeah. Yep. Um, I do like how um how he's able to insert himself into these situations by using the psychic paper.
Mhm.
Um, and that he's able to like just be like, "Oh, I'm from Scotland Yard," and then like the next scene, it's like something different on the psychic paper, and they have to kind of like lie about who they are so they can like try to solve this mystery. It's one of my favorite parts of the Doctor is the psychic paper. I kind of wish I had that in real life, actually. That would be so cool, just to be able to go around and be like, "Yeah, I work at this bank. Wait, yeah, look, see, I've got the bank ID. What are you talking about?"
I mean, I think a lot of like con men do that, uh, in reality, but they just have a very basic and they just, flash it real quick. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
FBI here, and then
Yeah, yeah,
holds it
yeah,
up for half a second, then puts it away.
yeah,
Because most
indeed.
people aren't the type of people to question it. As long as you're acting authoritatively, then they will.
Yeah,
Well,
you gotta have confidence. You gotta act like you belong, and then no one will
mhm.
question you.
Yeah, and then yeah, after that it kind of goes into the whole murder mystery, and we get Agatha Christie kind of struggling with imposter syndrome a little bit,
Yeah.
where she's
Which is
like,
based on a real thing. That is a real thing she did have problems with. She really felt that like, her work was not good enough, especially early on. She was just kind of barely making by. And then on top of that, as they mentioned in this episode, her husband did have an affair. And that's where actually we meet her in this episode is the day that she finds out that her husband had the affair. So she was already feeling kind of low and down on herself. And again, yeah, all that was true. She really did feel that way in real life.
"Hmm." And yeah, she's feeling like she can't really help, and then the doctor is really talking her up. It's like,
Hmm.
you're Agatha Christie. You're the perfect person to help solve this murder.
Yep. And I remember even like Donna's like again bring up the thing like what would Miss Marple do like in this situation? And Agatha was like, who? Who's Miss Marple? And they're like, oh, copyright.
Yeah, and then we get a couple action sequences with the Wasp.
Yeah.
And then the one part that I think is the weakest part of the episode, I think it's they took the silliness a little bit too far, is whenever the doctor is poisoned.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. Yeah. Because it's for some reason they like almost killing the doctor for some reason, but like that they're not, and he can regenerate anyway. So it's always like this weird thing when they do shit like this. And here it's how he expels poison. It's how he expels cyanide.
Hmm.
Because he ends up taking a drink of
Yeah,
something, and Agatha
the
figures out.
champagne.
Yeah, she figures out that, oh, I can smell almonds, so it's cyanide. And so, instead of, him dying, he ends up having to drink like a ginger beer. He needs something salty, and he's miming all of this because he
Hmm.
can't talk because he's getting poisoned, and so he's
Well,
doing all
because he has
this
his
shit.
mouth full.
Yeah, yeah, and so
Yeah,
he's
he's
doing all
like
this stuff.
he
Yeah.
asks for the ginger beer, and then he drinks it, and then he pours it all over himself, and he
Hmm.
says that he can force his enzymes um, to recover. And
Hmm.
then he says that he needs protein, and
Protein,
then they give him the
salt.
walnuts, and
Uh-huh.
he stuffs the walnuts in his mouth, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
that's why he can't talk.
That's it. He put the walnuts. Yeah, that's right. And
And
then
then
he
they have
needed
the
salt.
charades.
And
He's
then he's
like
trying to
shaking
mime the
his, yeah.
salt and like Harvey Wallbang.
And then he's like, "What are you nuts? How did you get Harvey Wallbanger from
Oh,
that? No,
yeah.
I need something salty. Here's salt. No, that's too salty."
Yeah, that's too much salt. Yeah, so anchovies will do it. And then of course he says, I gotta be shocked. And so she kisses him. Because we gotta have the companion make out with the doctor at least once a season. So
Yeah, and then he expels this cloud of black smoke.
yeah. And I agree with you that this is a bit much. I kind of hate when they do this with the doctor. I guess they just wanted to include the trope of cyanide poisoning in a murder mystery, but
Hmm.
they wanted to make it like, well, let's have the doctor be poisoned and let's how see how he deals with it, instead of having like a third murder victim. So that's something I could think of, but I'm with you. I'm not a fan of this sequence.
Well, it would be a fourth because there were three murder victims. There was
Or yeah,
Professor Peach, and then the maid, and then the
Maid,
son.
and then the son. Yeah, yeah.
And
But
then,
still.
the other bit of comedy that I do think worked well again is, we have another chase scene with the Wasp, and
Hmm.
then they end up chasing the Wasp, and Donna points out it's like this is a nice change of pace that we're chasing the
We're
monster
chasing,
instead,
yeah.
yeah,
So
instead
them
of the other
chasing
way around.
us. Yep, yeah.
And then it goes down the hallway, and then he's like says come out, and then everybody comes out the doors, and he's like, well, that's no fair.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Like I did like that part. Um, yeah, yeah.
And then I think the other bits where I think it goes a little bit too far is whenever we get to the explanation scene. And we
Mm,
start out with Agatha Christie explaining it. I mean, I think it kind of has its hits and misses. I think it goes on too long, and I think some of the accusations are take the trope a little bit too far.
mm.
But it's like Agatha, first accuses the woman posing as the unicorn, and she calls her out as being the unicorn, and then she points to the colonel, and the colonel confesses to faking being in the wheelchair,
Right, right.
and the woman of the house, Lady Edison, is like, oh my gosh. And Donna is sitting in the corner of the group, just like eating grapes
Grapes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because they
She's
don't
just
don't have popcorn. Just but it's like
it's just
it's like she's just eating popcorn, just
popcorn. Yeah, the way she was eating.
relishing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, so the colonel did it?" And
Like no.
Agatha's like, "No, I didn't know any of this. The colonel's.
Yeah.
I was about to say the colonel's
It's
innocent."
innocent. Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, so should I just sit down then?"
Mm.
Yes, that would be nice. And then I think she passes it off to the doctor, and then the
Yeah.
doctor is like, you, Lady Edison, and then and then that points to you, Donna Noble, and
Yeah.
because Donna's like, what?
What?
What are you talking about? And he talks about, uh, Donna's the one that said that it's just like one of Agatha's murder mysteries, which brings us to you. And he does the big, in every one of these accusations, we have
He's
the big pointing.
pointing scene. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they wanted to get cute with that, I think.
And then they go to Agatha uh, Christie because it was her stories, and then it goes back
Hmm.
to Lady Edison,
And
and then finally
then yeah,
to the Reverend.
yeah.
And
And
it,
then
it yeah, it turns out, that, and through this all, we kind of get the story about how Lady Edison, before she got in her current marriage, she had a trip in India where she met a Vespa form, and then he died during the flood, but she got pregnant and locked herself away for 6 months, and to have the baby in secret. And
and she brought the maid with her. The maid was
mm,
the only one that knew about it, and so the maid was helping with the delivery of the baby.
yeah. And she has this jewel that she always wears as a necklace to remember that. And then that ends up being, another bit of the alien thing.
Yeah.
And then the final reveal is that it was the Reverend, because the Reverend is exactly 40 years old, and she had the baby 40 years ago.
And
And
he fought off some like thieves in the church, but there's
mm,
no way he could have fought off like young men. So he, of course, had to turn into the Wasp to scare the thieves away. That's how the doctor figured it out.
yeah. And and another like bit of a silliness to that is every time he starts getting worked up, then his speech pattern becomes more
Yeah,
be
the
like
buzz, yeah,
the buzz
the buzz, buzz, yeah.
Lady Edison.
Buzz, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Doctor Who likes to get cute with that too, actually.
And
Um,
so he's finally revealed to be the Wasp, and then they're like, the alien explanation is that his bit of anger at seeing confronting the two ruffians, unlocked his genetic makeup, and
Yeah.
that, and then him turning into the Wasp for the first time connected him to the jewelry, which contains all of his, uh, alien
Like,
essence, I guess.
yeah, memories or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it gave him all of his alien memories, but it also gave him his mother's memories, and she was a big Agatha Christie fan, and
Yeah.
so that's what gave him all of the works of Agatha Christie, and that's what made him behave like he's in an Agatha Christie
Just,
novel, which
yeah.
which I think is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but the writers were like, we got to put in Agatha Christie somehow. How do we do that? We got to put this alien thing in there. For what it is, it works fine.
Hmm.
It could be worse.
Yeah,
It really could be worse.
and then it kind of doesn't, and then because it was based off of Agatha Christie's works, it's also mentally connected to Agatha Christie's mind,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
she takes the jewelry and goes to the lake, and
Yes.
then they're kind of like locked with each other because they're mentally connected for some reason, and then Donna throws it in the lake, and then we have this, again, this just weird bit of uh you know suspense, like just for suspense sake, because they're like, oh no, because they're mentally connected and the Vespa form is dying because he's drowning in the lake, that
Yeah.
means that Agatha Christie is going to
He's
die
gonna
too.
die. Yeah. I was gonna mention
Oh,
this.
yeah.
I was gonna say this because because the doctor's like he's really strict about keeping the timeline the way it's supposed to be,
Hmm.
and if anything deviates, he gets really upset. And so here he's worried about. He says specifically, I want to point this out, that time is in flux. Because flux ends up being a thing down the road. I don't think you're quite there yet.
No.
But flux ends up becoming a thing down the road. But he's worried that history is going to change, and that instead of Agatha Christie going missing, she's just going to flat out die, and all of her classic stuff like Murder at the Orient Express, Miss Marple, blah blah blah, doesn't get written. So that's gonna suck. So yeah, he gets worried about that. But thankfully the Wasp, he has a good heart, I guess, and he lets her live.
Yeah.
Um,
Which again, it doesn't make sense, and it's all just explained in these three lines of dialogue
yeah, 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 yeah.
as the camera pans over to a bubbling, ripples in the lake.
hmm Yeah. But then this is where they do like a fictional account of what happened to Agatha Christie in real life, in that after this event she gets a little traumatized because of everything that happened. And she took her car to this lake, and the Wasp, yeah, he drowns, and the jewel drowns. She's in shock, and so the doctor then is like well, we have to take her to the hotel 10 days later. And so that's how she got to that hotel. So I find it interesting that from her point of view, it's like mere seconds, but like to everyone else, she was just gone for 10 days. And this
Mhm.
is the doctor just fixing the timeline, like keeping everything the way that it was, because that's what happened in real life. So he had to take her to that hotel, the Harrogate hotel, and he had to do it 10 days later.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
they really kind of jump jump ahead. So it's like I get the impression that, it was mere moments for her. Like she did have a bit of mental trauma, but I think they just uh you know, brought her into the TARDIS and then jumped ahead 10
hmm
days
Yep.
just because that's how it happened.
Yeah. Um, Now, what, as again, like the real life Agatha Christie thing fascinates me, but what I think really happened, honestly, is I think she found out about the affair from her husband, and then just decided to just have a spa day, and then just didn't want to talk about it, and then she had to be
Yeah.
like, I don't want to talk about it. I just needed to get over the grief of my husband. I went to a hotel, and I'm fine, and let's never mention it again. That's what I
Yeah.
think really happened. I don't think there's
Yeah, she
anything.
just took like a sabbatical,
Yeah,
just
like, because
just went on a
remember,
mental retreat.
yeah, it's the 1920s, right? So,
Hmm.
like, divorce isn't like a huge thing then. And then the fact that, she's already having that imposter syndrome about her books, and now the man that she's married is cheating on her, that would freak anybody out. So, yeah, I think she deserves a 10-day vacation from life. Let her go put her feet in a spa. Let her go, sip a Mai Tai or whatever next to the pool. She's Agatha Christie. Let her be. Damn it.
Yeah, and then that's the end of the episode, and
Yeah. There's
it's
some there's some Doctor Who lore in this. If you're really into like Doctor Who, there's a bunch of references that show up at the end here. When he goes
right.
through the chest with the C,
Yeah,
you had to have seen a lot of episodes to get a few of these things. But he ends up finding one of her books
I
in this
mean,
chest.
I think Cyberman is a pretty obvious
Well, yeah.
reference.
No, yeah, but there's like other things besides, like there might be little things that, like, if you're only a casual fan of Doctor Who, you probably don't know what that is. But the Cyberman's the most famous one, obviously. But he finds a book written by her and it has a wasp on it, and he's just trying to explain that, yeah, maybe she didn't remember everything that happened, but she remembers some things. So like one of the things that leaked through was the Murder at the Orient Express, Miss Marple, and the Wasp, because one of her books had a giant wasp on it. And then we get a bunch of Doctor Who lore stuff. So
Yeah, and one thing that I realized that I kind of haven't done, but I think I might start doing again because I did kind of rank all of the classic episodes
mm,
with each other. But I haven't continued that into the new Who. I did the movie, and that's kind of its separate thing. And
yeah.
then, but I think I am going to go back to that and kind of rank these new Who episodes, on their own merits.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the Eccleston episode was Father's Day, and I think that was like, a big favorite of mine even as I went through it.
Mm,
So I do think that this episode is fun,
hmm.
and having experienced almost all of David Tennant's run at this point, I would kind of put this in the middle or lower middle. I don't think Tennant had too many bad episodes, but he had a lot of really fantastic episodes. I
Hmm.
think especially like like the going into the finale of the third season is a bunch of really strong episodes, like starting with the alien, like the sun space episode. I
Mm,
think that one's kind of hit and miss. I don't think it's a lot of people favorites, but I really enjoyed that one, like 41, or it was a number. Uh, and then going into like Blink, and then
yeah.
going into like the end of the universe with the Return of the Master.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
I thought
those. Yeah.
I thought those episodes were a bunch of really great episodes in a row. Although I wasn't a huge fan of the the third season finale with the weird old baby
Yeah,
Doctor
no.
Who.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of that either. I did not like that at all. It was those are like one of the weirder episodes of Tennant's run. Because me and Lackey covered them on our Doctor Who podcast some years ago, and yeah, we weren't really fans of that run. We did think that the guy that played the Master, whose name I can't think right now, um but he does a good job as the Master. But yeah, that whole bird old man thing was really weird.
But I think that they kind of recovered the landing. I thought that the fourth season uh finale, I thought that story was really done really good with the return of Rose, and
Mm,
the like kind of the big like basically the big Hooniverse crossover,
yeah.
which I did catch up. I had been watching a bit of the Sarah Jane Adventures, so I was familiar with Sarah Jane and her son Luke from that show. And I
Hmm.
watched a couple episodes of Torchwood,
Ah,
so I was familiar with Gwen.
okay.
So that was kind of helpful with all of that. And I really liked um like the uh like the themes that they were working with about how, the doctor himself is supposedly this great pacifist
Hmm.
now that he's trying to say, he kind of reminds me a bit of like Batman in the animated series, where
Oh.
Batman in that show, he was always trying to save his villains, like
Hmm.
because the vast majority of Batman's villains are just people with mental illnesses
Yeah, 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 yeah.
or like people that have suffered from horrific accidents like Clayface and
Or trauma
Two-Face.
or something. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and so he's like, he as a character is always trying to get to their humanity and rehabilitate them rather than, a lot of other incarnations of Batman who just wants to punch them to within an inch of their lives and
Yeah.
then throw them in jail, but never kill them. Like,
Never killed him. Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
And in this, the doctor is kind of that where he wants to, he's always giving these aliens the opportunity to save themselves and the opportunity to do the right thing. And then if they don't, it's usually the companions that end up, either inadvertently or on purpose killing them. And then he's in this situation with the Daleks where all of his companions are prepared to just commit mass destruction. I mean, like Martha is willing to destroy the entire Earth.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it's a good run. It is a good Tenet does have like a lot of good run episodes. And I picked this one because I think it's one of my favorite stories. My favorite one-off stories that's not again
Mhm.
part of an arcing story or part of any kind of actual lore stuff like that. I think it's one that you could just kind of dive in and watch it without having to know anything else about like what's going on in the season. Outside maybe who Donna is. If you don't know who Donna is, maybe watch that episode. But otherwise, you can kind of watch this on its own.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah,
I
it's
think the library is another good episode. The
yeah,
one with the shadows.
yeah, that's a good one too. Absolutely. And then this one's got the comedy on top of it, so added
Yeah.
bonus.
Yeah, and the Clue references. It does feel like it's kind of trying to be like the Doctor Who version of Clue the movie.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
But yeah, this was fun. I liked, talking about this episode, and especially it's good to talk about an episode where I actually have all of the knowledge surrounding it. Like it's not, I'm not just kind of jumping in without knowing these characters. Like it's nice knowing all these characters, even though it is still a one-off character, but it's nice
Hmm.
kind of knowing the story arc of Donna and David Tennant's Doctor coming into this. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to, in a way, probably going back to being the one-off episodes as I go into the future um, as I'm probably going to be jumping ahead whenever I cover Matt Smith's episode. But
Hmm.
I think by the time I record that, I will have at least some experience with Matt Smith's Doctor. So,
Okay. All right.
um,
Cool.
but yeah, thanks for joining me. This, again this season. I had to bring you back here.
I love coming to the show every once a season and talk about something and then you're doing Doctor Who, which is one of my favorite shows, and it's tied to my mother, so I was more than happy to, come on and do this with you. So yeah, this was fun. I enjoy doing this.
Right. And then for people that haven't heard you in a while, or you do have a lot of new projects since the last time you came on, why don't you let people know what you're doing these days and where you can be found online?
Yeah, so I have a podcast network called Rabbit Hole Podcasts. It's just a bunch of podcasts that basically involves around pop culture, movies, TV shows. Bubba hosts a music show with our mutual friend Nick Rehack. It's a great show, a lot of great stuff to check out. If you're into Doctor Who, we have a Doctor Who podcast I do with my pal Lackey. Couple of my newer shows is I take a look at movies that Rotten Tomatoes has said is rotten. And me and my friend the Vern, we discuss and see if they deserve to be rotten or not. That's called The Rotten Truth. You can find that there. And a lot of other great shows. Just go to rabbitholepodcast.com. Check them all out there. Old shows, new shows, everything is just going to be right there. Rabbitholepodcast.com.
And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on social media everywhere where I'm at Bubbawheat. These days, I'm most active on Threads, and that's kind of what I feel like is new Twitter. But I'm also have claimed my stake in a lot of the other newer ones, like I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm technically still on X, but or Twitter. I can't believe I just called it. I actually called it X.
You said it.
I
You
vowed
said
never to
it.
do that.
Uh-oh. You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
But I'm not active, but it's still on my phone. So if you do tweet at me, I will still see that. And we also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that group and have discussions about episodes as they come out, be informed of what I'm going to be covering in future seasons, or just have discussions about time loop movies, TV episodes, video games, novels. That's anything time loopy is welcome there. And until next time, smoke me a kipper and I will regenerate before breakfast next week.